The fluorescent lights above Trauma Bay 3 shattered, the moment the unidentified patient's heart stopped, and every piece of equipment in Silvercrest Memorial Hospital went dead, except the monitor beside the nurse everyone wanted gone. Emily Carter, 28 years old with auburn hair pulled back tight and a faded combat medic tattoo she kept hidden under long sleeves, had been invisible for 7 months. The attending physicians treated her like furniture. The senior nurses whispered she didn't belong. Former Marine or not, in their eyes she was just another probationary nobody who'd never make it past her first year. When paramedics wheeled in a silent man wearing a dark jacket and tactical boots, the ER chief barely glanced at him. "Probably homeless," he muttered. "Vitals are stable. Low priority." But Emily saw what no one else noticed, a faint extraction scar behind his left ear, the kind only military combat personnel carried. The second her fingers touched his wrist to check his pulse, his eyes snapped open like he'd been dragged out of a firefight. "You served," he whispered, barely audible. Before Emily could respond, Hospital Administrator Gerald Finch burst through the double doors and exploded. "Carter, you do not override attending staff!" But Emily had already seen the truth. This wasn't a civilian, and someone in this hospital wanted him dead. Then the Pentagon called, and they asked for her by name. If you want to see how far this story reaches, drop a comment with your city below and hit that like button. You won't believe what happens next. Now let's get into it. Emily Carter had learned a long time ago that silence was safer than speaking up. Silvercrest Memorial sat on the eastern edge of Ashford Heights, a mid-sized city where old money paid for new buildings and nobody asked too many questions. The hospital looked pristine from the outside. Glass towers, marble lobby, donor plaques covering every wall. Inside, it ran on hierarchy, ego, and the unspoken rule that probationary staff kept their mouths shut. Emily had been keeping hers shut for 7 months. She moved through the ER like a shadow, checking vitals, restocking crash carts, documenting everything twice because the senior nurses loved finding mistakes. She didn't complain when Dr. Raymond Hollis snapped at her for handing him the wrong gauge needle. She didn't argue when charge nurse Donna Pruitt reassigned her to the late shift 3 weeks in a row. She just worked, stayed quiet, and counted down the days until her probation ended. Nobody knew she'd spent 4 years as a combat medic with the 2nd Marine Division. Nobody knew she'd pulled wounded soldiers out of collapsing buildings in places the government still wouldn't name. Nobody knew she'd been honorably discharged after a mission went sideways and half her unit didn't come home. That was fine. Emily didn't need them to know. She just needed the job. The ER was chaos that night. Friday evening chaos. The kind that started with drunk drivers and bar fights and ended with overcrowded hallways and exhausted residents. Emily was restocking suture kits in the supply closet when she heard the sirens. Paramedics burst through the ambulance bay doors, pushing a gurney at full speed. "Male, approximately 35, found unresponsive near the railroad tracks," the lead medic shouted. "No ID, no wallet, vitals are borderline stable, but he's been in and out of consciousness." Emily stepped back as the trauma team swarmed. Dr. Hollis took one look at the patient and his expression soured. "Another transient," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Get him stable and move him to observation. We've got actual emergencies coming in." The man on the gurney didn't move. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. He wore a faded black jacket, dark jeans, and scuffed tactical boots that looked military issue. His hands were calloused, his knuckles scarred. Emily hung back near the wall, watching. Something felt wrong. Dr. Hollis waved a dismissive hand. "Carter, get his vitals. Standard workup. Don't waste time." Emily approached the gurney slowly. The man's face was pale, his jaw tight even in unconsciousness. She reached for his wrist to check his pulse. Standard procedure, quick and routine. The second her fingers touched his skin, his eyes snapped open. Not gradually. Not groggily. Instantly. Like someone waking up in a combat zone. His hand shot up and grabbed her wrist. Not violently, but firm, controlled. His eyes locked onto hers with a clarity that didn't match someone who'd just been found unconscious on the street. "You were deployed," he whispered. His voice was rough, barely audible over the noise of the ER. Emily froze. His gaze dropped to her forearm, where her sleeve had pulled back just enough to expose the edge of her tattoo, a small black combat medic insignia she'd gotten overseas. It wasn't visible unless you knew where to look. He knew where to look. "Who are you?" Emily asked quietly. Before he could answer, Dr. Hollis's voice cut through the room. "Carter, what the hell are you doing?" Emily released the man's wrist and stepped back. "Just checking his pulse, doctor."
"Then check it and move on. We don't have time for chit-chat." The man's eyes stayed on Emily for another moment, then closed again. His hand dropped back to the gurney. Emily recorded his vitals, pulse elevated but steady, blood pressure slightly low, pupils reactive. Everything pointed to exhaustion and dehydration, nothing life-threatening. But her instincts screamed otherwise. She glanced at his neck. There, just below his collar, was a faint scar. Surgical, precise, the kind left behind by military extraction procedures. She'd seen them before on special operations personnel who'd had tracking chips or emergency beacons implanted and later removed. Emily's stomach tightened. This man wasn't homeless, and he wasn't here by accident. She turned toward Dr. Hollis. "I think we should run a full—" "I think you should do what you're told," Hollis interrupted sharply. "He's stable. Move him to observation and clear this bay. We've got a multi-vehicle collision coming in." Emily opened her mouth to argue, but Charge Nurse Pruitt appeared beside her. "You heard the doctor," Pruitt said coldly. "Unless you've suddenly been promoted to attending, you don't get to question protocol." Emily bit back her response and nodded. She helped transfer the man to a standard observation bed in the overflow wing, a quieter section of the hospital where stable patients waited for discharge or transfer. The man didn't speak again, didn't open his eyes, but Emily noticed his breathing was too controlled, too measured. He wasn't unconscious. He was waiting. Emily finished her charting and returned to the main ER. The rest of the night blurred into the usual chaos. Lacerations, chest pain, a kid who'd swallowed a battery. She kept her head down, did her job, and tried to ignore the gnawing feeling that something was very wrong. It was almost midnight when Administrator Gerald Finch appeared in the ER. Finch was a tall man in his early 50s with silver hair, expensive suits, and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He ran Silvercrest Memorial like a business, not a hospital. He cared about donor relations, budget reports, and making sure nothing tarnished the hospital's reputation. He walked directly to Charge Nurse Pruitt and spoke in a low voice. Emily was restocking IV supplies nearby and couldn't hear the full conversation, but she caught fragments. "The unidentified patient in observation. Transfer him out first thing in the morning. Don't waste resources." Pruitt nodded obediently. "Understood, Mr. Finch." Finch's gaze swept the ER and landed on Emily. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made her skin crawl. He knew something, and he didn't want anyone else to know it. Emily finished her shift at 2 in the morning and clocked out without speaking to anyone. She walked through the employee parking lot toward her car, exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders. Halfway to her car, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. The unidentified patient from the ER stood 10 feet away, perfectly steady on his feet. He wasn't wearing a hospital gown anymore. Someone had given him his clothes back. Emily's hand instinctively went to her pocket, where she kept a small canister of pepper spray. The man raised both hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" Emily asked, keeping her voice level. "Because you're the only person in that hospital who saw what I am." He took a step closer. "My name is Lieutenant Jacob Cross, United States Navy, and someone in this building just tried to kill me." Emily's pulse spiked. "What are you talking about?" "The IV line they put in my arm," Jacob said quietly. "It wasn't saline. It was laced with a sedative strong enough to stop my heart in about 6 hours. Slow enough that it would look like natural causes." Emily stared at him. "That's impossible. The pharmacy checks every—" "Someone bypassed the pharmacy," Jacob interrupted. "Someone with access to restricted medications. Someone who knew exactly when I'd be brought in." Emily's mind raced. She thought about the way Administrator Finch had appeared so quickly, the way Dr. Hollis had dismissed the patient without a second look, the way Pruitt had insisted on moving him to observation, away from the main ER, away from monitoring, away from witnesses. "Why would anyone want to kill you?" Emily asked. Jacob's expression hardened. "Because I know things I'm not supposed to know, and because the people who want me dead have enough money and power to make it look like an accident." Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out and stared at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number.
Get back inside the hospital, now. Don't ask questions. Lives depend on it. Emily looked up at Jacob. Did you send this? He shook his head. No. But if you just got a message like that, it means someone else knows I'm alive. Emily's phone buzzed again. Another text. Emily Carter, former Marine combat medic, discharged 3 years ago, relocated to Ashford Heights under a new identity. You were never supposed to be found. Get inside, now. Emily's blood went cold. Nobody knew her real background. Nobody. She'd buried her military service, changed cities, taken a new job under a clean slate. The hospital had her basic resume: nursing school, clinical rotations, nothing more. Whoever sent this message knew things that shouldn't exist on paper. Jacob was already moving toward the hospital entrance. We need to go, right now. Emily didn't argue. She followed him back through the employee entrance, her heart hammering. The hallways were quiet. Most of the night shift staff were clustered in the ER or the ICU. Emily and Jacob moved quickly toward the observation wing. When they reached the room where Jacob had been placed earlier, the door was open, the bed was empty, but the IV stand was still there, and the bag hanging from it wasn't saline. Emily grabbed a pair of gloves from the wall dispenser and carefully disconnected the IV line. She held the bag up to the light. The liquid inside was slightly cloudy, wrong color, wrong consistency. This is potassium chloride, Emily said quietly. High concentration. It would have caused cardiac arrest within hours. Jacob's jaw tightened. So you believe me now? Emily didn't answer. She was staring at the patient chart clipped to the foot of the bed. The attending physician's signature read, Dr. Raymond Hollis. The medication order read, Standard saline IV, 1,000 milliliters, continuous infusion. But the bag hanging from the stand wasn't standard saline. Someone had switched it. Emily's phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen. Exit the building through the east loading dock. A vehicle will be waiting. Don't trust anyone inside Silvercrest Memorial, especially not the people in charge. Jacob was already moving toward the door. Whoever sent that message is trying to help us. Or lead us into a trap, Emily muttered. But she followed him anyway. They moved through the back hallways, avoiding the main corridors. Emily's mind was racing. If someone had tried to poison Jacob, that meant there were people inside the hospital willing to commit murder. And if they knew her real background, that meant they'd been watching her long before tonight. They reached the east loading dock and pushed through the heavy metal door. A black SUV sat idling in the shadows, engine running, windows tinted. Jacob stopped. That's a federal vehicle. Emily stared at him. How do you know? Because I've been inside 100 of them. The driver's side door opened. A woman stepped out, late 30s, dark suit, military posture. She held up a badge. Lieutenant Jacob Cross, Nurse Emily Carter. I'm Agent Rebecca Stiles, Department of Defense. You need to come with me, now. Emily didn't move. Why? Agent Stiles' expression was grim. Because Silvercrest Memorial Hospital is currently under investigation for conspiracy, medical fraud, and attempted assassination of a federal operative. And as of 30 minutes ago, both of you are officially persons of interest. Emily's stomach dropped. We didn't do anything. I know, Stiles interrupted, but the people who tried to kill Lieutenant Cross think you helped him escape, which means you're a target now too. Jacob stepped forward. Who sent the texts? Stiles glanced at him. Someone inside the Pentagon who's been tracking this case for 6 months. Someone who knew you'd be transported through Ashford Heights tonight. Someone who placed Emily Carter at Silvercrest Memorial 3 months ago because they knew she'd recognize military personnel when she saw one. Emily's world tilted. Wait, she said slowly. You're saying I was planted here? Stiles met her gaze. You were recruited here. There's a difference. Your military record was flagged after your discharge. The Department of Defense has been watching you. When we needed someone inside this hospital, someone who could blend in and stay unnoticed, your name came up. Emily felt like she'd been punched. Nobody contacted me. Nobody asked. We didn't need to, Stiles said bluntly. Your background check was clean. Your psych evaluations were solid. You were already looking for work in this region. We just made sure Silvercrest Memorial's hiring committee saw your application first. Jacob was staring at Emily. You didn't know. Emily shook her head, her voice hollow. I had no idea.
Stiles opened the rear door of the SUV. We can explain everything later. Right now, we need to move. Because whoever tried to kill Lieutenant Cross is still inside that hospital, and they're not going to stop. Emily looked back at the building, the place she'd worked for 7 months, the place where she'd kept her head down and tried to disappear. She climbed into the SUV. Jacob followed. The vehicle pulled out of the loading dock and disappeared into the night. Inside Silvercrest Memorial, Administrator Gerald Finch stood in his office on the 4th floor staring at his phone. The screen displayed a single message from an encrypted line. Cross is alive. Carter is with him. Recommend immediate protocol shutdown. Finch's hand tightened around the phone. He dialed a number he'd only used twice before. A voice answered on the first ring. Problem? Finch's voice was cold. We have a complication. Handle it. The line went dead. Finch walked to his office window and looked down at the darkened loading dock. The SUV was already gone, but he knew where it was going, and he knew exactly who to call. The SUV cut through the empty streets of Ashford Heights without slowing down. Agent Stiles drove with the kind of precision that came from years of high-stakes work, smooth turns, constant speed, eyes flicking between the mirrors every few seconds. Emily sat in the back seat beside Jacob, her mind spinning too fast to settle on any single thought. She'd been placed at Silvercrest Memorial, not hired, placed, like a chess piece moved into position by someone who saw the board differently than everyone else. Jacob stared out the window, his jaw tight. He hadn't spoken since they left the hospital. Emily recognized the look. She'd worn it herself plenty of times overseas, the expression of someone trying to calculate how many people wanted them dead and how much time they had before the next move. Stiles took a hard left onto an access road that led away from the main downtown corridor. The buildings thinned out, replaced by industrial warehouses and storage facilities that looked abandoned even in daylight. Where are we going? Emily asked. Secure location, Stiles said without turning around. Somewhere off the grid. Somewhere the people at Silvercrest can't track. Jacob finally spoke. You said I was being transported through Ashford Heights. Transported where? Stiles was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Naval Intelligence Facility in Quantico. You were supposed to testify in a closed hearing about Operation Blackwater. Emily glanced at Jacob. What's Operation Blackwater? Classified, Jacob said flatly. Stiles made a sound that might have been a laugh. Not anymore. Not after tonight. She pulled the SUV into the parking lot of what looked like an old freight depot. Cracked pavement, rusted gates, graffiti covering the walls. She cut the engine and turned around to face them. Operation Blackwater was a joint task force initiative launched 4 years ago, Stiles said. The official mission was counterterrorism surveillance in conflict zones overseas. The unofficial mission was corporate espionage, weapons trafficking, and black market medical supply networks. Emily felt her stomach drop. Medical supplies? Stiles nodded. High-grade pharmaceuticals, surgical equipment, controlled substances. The kind of inventory that hospitals and military bases track carefully. Except someone figured out how to make shipments disappear from official records and reappear on the black market. We're talking millions of dollars in stolen medical resources. Jacob's voice was cold. And Silvercrest Memorial is part of it. One of 15 hospitals across 6 states, Stiles confirmed. They've been funneling supplies through a shell company called Summit Health Logistics. On paper, it's a legitimate distributor. In reality, it's a front for moving stolen inventory to buyers overseas. Emily thought about Administrator Finch, the expensive suits, the donor meetings, the way he ran the hospital like a business. Finch is in on it, she said. Finch runs it, Stiles corrected. At least the Silvercrest branch. He's been skimming supplies for 3 years. Pain medication, surgical anesthetics, antibiotics, anything with resale value. The hospital's budget reports show standard purchasing and usage. But the actual inventory is 30% lower than what's documented. Jacob leaned forward. How did naval intelligence get involved? Stiles hesitated. Emily caught it. The brief flicker of something that looked like regret. Because one of the buyers was a militant group operating in Syria, Stiles said quietly. They used the stolen medical supplies to treat their own wounded fighters. And when one of our special operations teams raided their compound, they found surgical kits with serial numbers traced back to U.S. military hospitals.
The silence in the SUV was suffocating. Jacob's hands were clenched into fists. So American doctors are selling supplies that end up helping the people trying to kill American soldiers. Not doctors, Stiles said. Administrators, logistics coordinators, people who saw an opportunity and took it. People like Gerald Finch. Emily's throat felt tight. She thought about the night she'd worked herself to exhaustion in that ER. The patients she'd saved. The supply closet she'd restocked without question. And the whole time, someone had been stealing from those same closets to fund a criminal network. Why me? Emily asked. Why put me at Silvercrest? Stiles met her gaze. Because we needed someone who could recognize military personnel. Someone who wouldn't panic under pressure. Someone who'd been in combat and knew how to think tactically. You could have told me, Emily said, her voice harder than she intended. You could have asked. If we'd told you, you would have acted differently, Stiles said bluntly. You would have been watching for threats. You would have been careful. And the people we're investigating would have noticed. We needed you to be exactly what you were, a probationary nurse trying to keep her head down. Emily wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Stiles was right. If she'd known, she would have been different, and different meant visible. Jacob shifted beside her. So what was the plan? You put Emily in place, wait for something to happen, and then swoop in? The plan was surveillance, Stiles said. We've had agents monitoring Silvercrest for 6 months, watching shipments, tracking communications, building a case. But then you got flagged for transport through Ashford Heights, and someone inside the network found out. Found out what? Jacob asked. Stiles's expression darkened. That you were one of the operatives who raided the compound in Syria. That you saw the stolen medical supplies firsthand, that you could testify about the serial numbers and connect them directly to Summit Health Logistics. Emily understood now. Jacob wasn't just a witness. He was the witness. The one person who could tie the entire operation together in a federal courtroom. So they tried to kill you before you could talk, Emily said. They tried to make it look like an accident, Jacob corrected. A random unidentified patient found on the street. No ID, no records, no reason for anyone to investigate further. Just another statistic. Stiles pulled a tablet from the front seat and handed it to Emily. The screen displayed a file with Jacob's photo and military service record. Lieutenant Jacob Cross, Stiles said. Navy SEAL, 6 deployments, 3 commendations. He was part of a task force that operated in classified theaters. When his unit discovered the stolen supplies, he reported it through official channels. That report triggered the Operation Blackwater investigation. Emily scrolled through the file. Jacob's record was spotless. Decorated, dedicated, the kind of soldier who followed orders and did the right thing even when it was hard. And now people want him dead for it, Emily said quietly. Not just people, Stiles said. A network. Administrators, logistics coordinators, distribution executives. They've spent years building this operation. They've made millions. And they're not going to let one Navy SEAL destroy it. Jacob's voice was flat. How many people are we talking about? At least 40 across the network, Stiles said. But the core leadership is smaller. Maybe 10 people pulling the strings. Finch is one of them. Emily handed the tablet back. So what's the plan now? Stiles opened the driver's door. We get you both somewhere safe. Then we bring in federal prosecutors and start making arrests. She stepped out of the SUV and motioned for them to follow. The freight depot looked even worse up close. Broken windows, cracked concrete, weeds growing through the pavement. Stiles led them to a side entrance that looked rusted shut, but when she pressed her palm against a hidden scanner, the door clicked open. Inside, the building was completely different. Clean floors, LED lighting, rows of computer terminals and surveillance equipment. Half a dozen agents in dark suits working at desks, headsets on, screens glowing. This wasn't an abandoned depot. It was a federal command center. Stiles walked them past the main operations area toward a briefing room in the back. Emily caught fragments of conversation as they passed, mentions of warrants, shipping manifests, encrypted communications. This investigation was bigger than she'd realized. The briefing room had a conference table, a wall of monitors, and a single man standing with his back to them, studying a digital map of Ashford Heights. He turned when they entered. Emily recognized him immediately. Not from Silvercrest Memorial. Not from Ashford Heights. From a military transport plane 4 years ago in a country she wasn't supposed to talk about. Captain Daniel Merrick. Marine Corps intelligence. The officer who debriefed her after the mission that ended her deployment. The mission where half her unit died.
Merrick's expression didn't change, but his eyes lingered on Emily for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Nurse Carter, he said evenly. It's been a while. Emily's voice came out colder than she intended. Captain, Jacob glanced between them. You two know each other? We've met, Merrick said. He gestured toward the chairs. Sit. We don't have much time. Stiles closed the door behind them. Merrick tapped the table, and the monitors on the wall flickered to life, displaying surveillance footage from inside Silvercrest Memorial. This is from tonight, Merrick said, 30 minutes after you left. The footage showed the observation wing where Jacob had been placed. 2 men in hospital security uniforms entered the room, checked the empty bed, and immediately pulled out phones. Those aren't regular security, Stiles said. They're private contractors hired by Summit Health Logistics. They were positioned at Silvercrest specifically to monitor Jacob's transport. The footage cut to another camera, the main ER. Administrator Finch appeared, speaking urgently to Dr. Hollis and charge nurse Pruitt. All three looked tense. They know he's gone, Jacob said. They know you both are gone, Merrick corrected. He tapped the screen again and the footage shifted to the employee parking lot. Emily saw herself walking toward her car, saw Jacob approach her, saw them both head back inside. They've been watching you since your first shift, Merrick said to Emily. Not because they suspected you, because they suspect everyone. Finch runs a tight operation. He monitors staff movements, tracks inventory access, reviews security footage regularly. It's how he stayed ahead of investigations for 3 years. Emily stared at the screen. So he knows I helped Jacob escape. He knows you were seen with Jacob, Merrick said. Which makes you a liability. Stiles crossed her arms. We've already issued protection orders. Emily's apartment is being secured. Her accounts are being monitored, but we can't keep you both hidden forever. Jacob's voice was hard. Then don't hide us. Use us. Merrick raised an eyebrow. Explain. They think we're running, Jacob said. They think we're scared. Let them keep thinking that while you build your case. But when you're ready to move, we go back. Emily turned to stare at him. Go back where? Silvercrest Memorial, Jacob said. You walk back into that hospital like nothing happened. You finish your shift, you act normal, and you help us catch them in the act. Emily's pulse spiked. That's insane. That's tactical, Jacob countered. Right now they're panicking, they're scrambling, they're making mistakes. If we disappear completely, they'll shut everything down and cover their tracks. But if you go back, they'll think they still have control. They'll keep operating, and we'll have time to gather evidence. Merrick was watching Emily carefully. He's not wrong. He's completely wrong, Emily shot back. If I go back, they'll kill me. Not if we're watching, Stiles said. We have surveillance inside the hospital. We have agents embedded in the staff. We can monitor your every move. Emily shook her head. You didn't even tell me I was being monitored before. Why would I trust you now? Merrick stepped closer. Because you know how these operations work, Carter. You've been in combat. You know the difference between running and fighting. And you know that sometimes the only way out is through. Emily's jaw tightened. She hated that he was right. She hated that she was even considering this. But she also hated the idea of people like Gerald Finch getting away with it. What's the timeline? She asked. Merrick pulled up a new screen showing shipping schedules and supply chain data. Summit Health Logistics has a major shipment leaving Silvercrest Memorial in 72 hours. If we're going to catch them red-handed, that's our window. Jacob leaned forward. Where's the shipment going? Port facility in Baltimore, Stiles said. From there, it gets loaded onto a cargo freighter bound for Turkey. Once it's out of U.S. jurisdiction, we lose it. Emily studied the data. So we have 3 days to gather enough evidence to stop the shipment and arrest everyone involved. Exactly, Merrick said. Jacob looked at Emily. You don't have to do this. Emily met his gaze. Yeah, I do. Because if she didn't, people like Finch would keep stealing, keep profiting, keep funding networks that hurt soldiers like the ones she'd served with. Merrick nodded once. Then here's how it's going to work. Emily, you go back to Silvercrest tomorrow morning. You clock in for your regular shift. You act like tonight never happened. If anyone asks, you got called away for a family emergency and you're back now. And if they don't believe me, Emily asked, they will.
Stiles said, because we're going to make sure your story checks out. Emergency room visit at another hospital across town, documented and time-stamped. Finch will verify it and see exactly what we want him to see. Jacob crossed his arms. What about me? Merrick's expression hardened. You stay dead. Officially, you never made it out of that observation room. The DoD will release a statement confirming your death in transit. It'll buy us time and keep the network from panicking. Jacob didn't look happy, but he nodded. Emily felt the weight of what she'd just agreed to settle over her like a lead blanket. She was going back into a hospital run by criminals, people who'd already tried to kill once tonight. I need something, Emily said. Merrick raised an eyebrow. What? A weapon. Stiles shook her head. You can't bring a firearm into the hospital. Security will flag it immediately. Then give me something that won't get flagged, Emily said. Something small. Something I can carry without anyone noticing. Merrick studied her for a moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small tactical pen. It looked like a normal ballpoint, but Emily recognized the reinforced steel tip and weighted grip. Pressure point strikes, Merrick said, handing it to her. Aim for the throat, temple, or carotid. It'll drop someone fast if you need it to. Emily took the pen and slipped it into her pocket. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Stiles checked her watch. We need to move. Emily, we'll get you back to your apartment. You'll have a protective detail outside, but they'll stay invisible. Jacob, you're staying here until we're ready to extract you. Jacob nodded. Merrick stepped closer to Emily. One more thing. If this goes wrong, if you're compromised at any point, you abort immediately. Don't try to be a hero. Just get out. Emily met his eyes. I've never tried to be a hero, Captain. I just try to stay alive. Merrick almost smiled. Good. Keep it that way. Stiles led Emily back through the operations center toward a different vehicle parked outside. A standard sedan, nothing that would draw attention. Jacob followed them to the door. Hey, he said quietly. Emily turned. Thank you, Jacob said, for what you did tonight, for seeing what no one else saw. Emily shrugged. I just did my job. No, Jacob said. You did more than that. Emily didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded and climbed into the sedan. Stiles drove her back across Ashford Heights as the city started waking up, streetlights flickering off, early commuters heading toward the highway, delivery trucks making their rounds. Emily's apartment was in a quiet neighborhood on the south side, nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom unit in a building that didn't ask too many questions. Stiles parked 2 blocks away. Protective detail is already in place. 2 agents in a van down the street, one in the building across from yours. You won't see them, but they'll see you. Emily reached for the door handle, then stopped. Why did Merrick really put me at Silvercrest? Stiles was quiet for a moment. You'd have to ask him. I'm asking you, Stiles sighed. Because you were good at your job. Because you kept your head down. And because Merrick thought you deserved a second chance after what happened overseas. Emily's chest tightened. What happened overseas wasn't my fault. I know, Stiles said, but you've been acting like it was for 3 years. Emily didn't respond. She got out of the car and walked the rest of the way to her apartment alone. Inside, everything looked exactly the way she'd left it. Small kitchen, secondhand furniture, walls that needed paint. She dropped her bag on the counter and stood in the middle of the room, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 6 hours. She'd been placed at Silvercrest Memorial. Jacob Cross was supposed to be dead. Gerald Finch was running a criminal network. And in less than 12 hours, she had to walk back into that hospital and pretend nothing was wrong. Emily pulled the tactical pen from her pocket and set it on the counter. Then she walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the water run cold. By the time the sun came up, Emily was already awake. She dressed in her usual scrubs, pulled her hair back, and checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing that would indicate her life had been turned upside down overnight. She grabbed her keys and headed to Silvercrest Memorial. The drive felt surreal. Same route, same traffic, same parking lot, but everything was different now. Emily walked through the employee entrance and clocked in at exactly 7 a.m. The ER was already busy, standard morning chaos. She grabbed a patient chart from the intake desk and started her shift. Charge Nurse Pruitt appeared beside her within 5 minutes. Carter, Pruitt said coolly. You're late. Emily kept her voice steady. Family emergency last night. I documented it with HR. Pruitt's eyes narrowed. Next time, call ahead. Understood. Pruitt walked away, but Emily felt the weight of her stare even after she was gone. The morning passed slowly. Emily moved through her tasks on autopilot. Vitals, medications, charting. She avoided eye contact, kept her head down, played the role of the invisible probationary nurse. But she was watching. She noticed the way security guards lingered near the supply closets longer than usual. She noticed Dr. Hollis checking his phone every few minutes. She noticed the way Administrator Finch appeared in the ER twice before noon, scanning the room like he was looking for something. Or someone. Around 1 p.m., Emily was restocking crash cart supplies when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Supply closet C, 3rd floor, 5 minutes. Come alone. Emily's pulse spiked. She glanced around the ER. No one was watching her. She slipped her phone back into her pocket and walked toward the stairwell. The 3rd floor was quieter, mostly administrative offices and storage rooms. Supply closet C was at the end of a hallway that didn't get much foot traffic. Emily pushed the door open. Captain Merrick stood inside, dressed in a maintenance uniform with a hospital ID badge clipped to his belt. You're supposed to be at the command center, Emily said quietly. Plans changed, Merrick said. We intercepted a communication from Finch 20 minutes ago. He's moving the shipment up. It's leaving tonight instead of in 3 days. Emily's stomach dropped. Tonight? Midnight, Merrick confirmed. Loading dock, east side of the building. We need to be ready. Ready for what? Merrick's expression was grim. To catch them in the act, and to make sure you stay alive while we do it. Before Emily could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Merrick pressed a finger to his lips and pulled Emily deeper into the closet, behind a shelf of medical supplies. The door opened. Administrator Gerald Finch stepped inside, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it takes, Finch said coldly. Find the nurse. Find out who she's been talking to. And make sure she doesn't leave this hospital alive. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Merrick's hand clamped over her wrist. Not rough, but firm enough to keep her absolutely still. They were pressed against the back wall of the supply closet, hidden behind a metal shelving unit stacked with IV bags and surgical kits. Through the gap between boxes, Emily could see Finch's profile. His expression was calm, almost bored, like he was ordering lunch instead of authorizing a murder. The shipment leaves at midnight, Finch continued into the phone. I want this cleaned up before then. No loose ends. He paused, listening. I don't care if she's been working here for 7 months. She helped Cross escape. That makes her a problem. Another pause. Yes, inside the hospital. Make it look like an accident, equipment malfunction, medication error, whatever. Just handle it. Finch ended the call and slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. He stood there for a moment, staring at nothing, then turned and walked out. The door clicked shut. Emily exhaled slowly. Her hands were shaking. Merrick released her wrist and moved to the door, pressing his ear against it. After a few seconds, he pulled back and looked at her. You heard that, he said quietly. Emily nodded. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. He wants me dead before midnight. Then we move now, Merrick said. He pulled a radio from his belt and spoke in a low voice. Stiles, we're compromised. Finch just ordered a hit on Carter. Timelines accelerated. Stiles's voice crackled back immediately. Copy. Extraction? Negative, Merrick said, glancing at Emily. We proceed as planned, but we need eyes on her every second until midnight. Understood. I'll position additional assets inside the building. Merrick clipped the radio back to his belt. You need to stay visible. If you disappear, Finch will know we're on to him. But if you're out in the open, surrounded by witnesses, he can't touch you without exposing himself. Emily's mind was racing. What about the shipment? We let it load, Merrick said. We document everything. Once the cargo's on the truck and ready to move, we hit them with federal warrants and shut the whole thing down. And if something goes wrong before then? Merrick's expression was grim. Then you use that pen I gave you and you get the hell out. Emily pulled the tactical pen from her pocket and gripped it tight. The weight felt reassuring. Stay in the ER, Merrick said. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't accept food or drinks from anyone. And if you see anything that feels wrong, you radio me immediately. He handed her a small earpiece, the kind that fit inside the ear canal and was almost invisible. Keep this in, Merrick said. I'll be able to hear everything around you. If you need backup, just say the word protocol out loud. Say it in any sentence, any context. My team will be on you in 30 seconds. Emily fitted the earpiece into place. How many people do you have inside the hospital? 4 agents embedded in staff positions, 2 more in vehicles outside. And me. Merrick adjusted his maintenance uniform. I'll be moving supplies, checking equipment, staying mobile. If anyone asks, I'm a contractor filling in for the night shift. Emily nodded. What about Jacob? He's safe at the command center. Once we have Finch and his people in custody, we'll bring him in to testify. Merrick moved toward the door, then stopped. Carter, what happened to your unit overseas? Don't, Emily interrupted. Her voice was flat. Not now. Merrick studied her for a moment, then nodded once. Fair enough. He opened the door slowly, checked the hallway, and slipped out. Emily waited 30 seconds, then followed. She made her way back to the ER, keeping her steps measured and her expression neutral. Inside, the controlled chaos continued, patients being triaged, monitors beeping, residents shouting orders. Emily grabbed a clipboard from the nurse's station and scanned the board for her next assignment. Charge Nurse Pruitt appeared beside her. Carter, Trauma 3 needs a central line placement. You're assisting Dr. Hollis. Emily kept her face blank. Understood. She walked toward Trauma 3, every nerve in her body screaming that this was a setup. Central line placements required sedation, sterile fields, restricted access. If someone wanted to kill her quietly, this was the perfect opportunity. But if she refused, Pruitt would know something was wrong. Emily pushed through the doors into Trauma 3. Dr. Hollis stood beside the bed, gloves on, sterile kit already laid out. The patient was a middle-aged man with labored breathing, probable pneumonia, possible sepsis. He needed the central line to deliver high-dose antibiotics directly into his bloodstream. Finally, Hollis muttered when Emily entered. Glove up. I need you to hold pressure on the insertion site while I thread the catheter. Emily moved to the supply cart and pulled on gloves. Her hands were steady now, muscle memory taking over. She positioned herself opposite Hollis, one hand ready to apply pressure, the other holding gauze. Hollis prepped the patient's neck with antiseptic and injected local anesthetic. Scalpel. Emily handed it over. Hollis made a small incision just above the clavicle. Blood welled up immediately. Normal response. Emily applied pressure with gauze while Hollis inserted the guide wire. Dilator, Hollis said. Emily reached for the dilator on the sterile tray. Her fingers brushed against something that didn't belong. A syringe, filled with clear liquid, tucked beneath the surgical drape where only someone preparing the tray would have seen it. Emily's pulse spiked. She glanced at the label on the syringe. Potassium chloride, 40 milliequivalents, lethal dose. Same drug they'd tried to use on Jacob. Hollis was focused on threading the catheter, not looking at her. Emily palmed the syringe and slipped it into her scrub pocket in one smooth motion. Dilator, Carter, Hollis snapped. Now! Emily handed him the correct instrument. Her mind was racing. Someone had planted that syringe knowing she'd be the one assisting, knowing she'd have access to the patient's IV line. If she'd injected it, the patient would have gone into cardiac arrest within minutes, and everyone would have blamed her. The procedure finished without incident. Hollis stripped off his gloves and left without a word. Emily stayed behind to clean up, her hands moving automatically while her brain worked through the implications. Someone on the medical staff was working with Finch, someone who had access to restricted medications and surgical trays, someone who knew exactly when Emily would be called into Trauma 3. Emily disposed of the used supplies and walked back into the main ER. She scanned the room carefully. Pruitt was at the nurse's station, typing notes. Dr. Hollis was already with another patient. The residents looked exhausted. The paramedics looked annoyed, and the security guards looked wrong. Emily's training kicked in instantly. The 2 guards near the ambulance bay weren't hospital security. Their posture was too controlled, their eyes too alert. They weren't watching patients, they were watching staff, watching her. Emily pulled out her phone and pretended to check a message while angling the camera toward the guards. She snapped 2 quick photos, then sent them to the number Stiles had given her. The response came back in seconds. Confirmed. Summit contractors. Stay away from them. Emily slipped her phone back into her pocket and moved toward the supply room. She needed to get rid of the syringe before anyone noticed it was missing from the tray. The supply room was empty. Emily pulled the syringe from her pocket and was about to dispose of it in the sharps container when the door opened behind her. Charge Nurse Pruitt stepped inside. "What are you doing?" Pruitt asked. Emily kept her voice steady. "Restocking supplies." Pruitt's eyes dropped to the syringe in Emily's hand. "Where did you get that?" "Trauma 3, unused medication. I'm disposing of it properly." Pruitt's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Let me see it." Emily's grip tightened on the syringe. "It's protocol to dispose of controlled substances immediately." "I said let me see it," Pruitt interrupted, stepping closer. Emily's instincts screamed. She thought about the tactical pen in her other pocket. She thought about the word Merrick had given her. Protocol. But if she said it now, federal agents would storm the hospital. The operation would be blown. Finch would shut everything down. Emily made a split-second decision. She handed Pruitt the syringe. Pruitt examined the label, her face unreadable. Then she looked at Emily. "This wasn't on the supply order for Trauma 3, Pruitt said quietly. "I know," Emily said. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Pruitt walked to the sharps container and disposed of the syringe herself. "You didn't see this." "I didn't see this." "Understood?" Emily nodded slowly. Pruitt moved toward the door, then stopped without turning around. "You should leave this hospital, Carter, tonight, before something happens that you can't walk away from." Then she was gone. Emily stood in the empty supply room, her heart hammering. Pruitt knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. And she'd just given Emily a warning. The question was whether Pruitt was trying to help her or eliminate a witness. Emily's earpiece crackled softly. Merrick's voice came through, barely audible. "Carter, report." Emily kept her voice low. "Pruitt just confronted me about a syringe. Potassium chloride. Someone planted it in the surgical tray." "Copy. We're tracking Pruitt's movements. Stay visible." Emily left the supply room and returned to the ER. The next 3 hours blurred together. Patient after patient, vital signs, medications, charting. She worked mechanically, hyper-aware of every person who came near her, every shadow in her peripheral vision. At 8 p.m., the shift change happened. New nurses clocked in. New residents took over. The ER briefly descended into chaos as information was transferred and patients were handed off. Emily was updating a chart when her phone buzzed. Text from Stiles. "Shipment prep starting in 30 minutes. Loading dock east side. We need you there." Emily's stomach tightened. The loading dock was on the opposite end of the hospital, away from the ER, away from witnesses. She replied, "Why?" Stiles' response was immediate. "Because we need someone who can identify medical supplies on site. Someone who knows what should and shouldn't be leaving this hospital. That's you." Emily looked around the ER. Fewer staff now, fewer patients. The 2 Summit contractors were still near the ambulance bay, watching. She clocked out at the nurses' station and walked toward the east wing. The hallways grew quieter as she moved deeper into the hospital. Fewer lights, fewer people. The kind of spaces where things happened and nobody saw. Emily's hand went to her pocket, fingers brushing the tactical pen. She reached the loading dock access corridor. A heavy metal door marked authorized personnel only led to the exterior platform where supply trucks backed in for deliveries. Emily pushed through. The loading dock was massive. Concrete platform, steel roll-up doors, industrial lighting. 3 trucks were already backed up to the bays, engines idling. Men in dark coveralls moved between them, loading sealed crates onto pallets. Stiles appeared from behind one of the trucks, dressed in maintenance coveralls. She motioned Emily over. "Those crates," Stiles said quietly, pointing to a stack near the second truck. "We need confirmation they're medical supplies, not standard inventory." Emily moved closer, scanning the labels. The manifest showed generic descriptions: medical equipment, pharmaceutical supplies, surgical materials. But the serial numbers were wrong. They didn't match Silvercrest's standard inventory codes. "These aren't hospital supplies," Emily said. "At least not from the official stock." "That's what we needed," Stiles said. She pulled out a small camera and started photographing the crates, the manifests, the trucks. One of the men loading cargo glanced over. His eyes locked on Emily. She recognized him immediately. Not from the hospital. From the surveillance photos Merrick had shown her at the command center. Marcus Webb, former Army logistics officer, dishonorably discharged for theft, current operations manager for Summit Health Logistics, and the man Finch had been communicating with all day. Webb set down the crate he was holding and walked toward them. "You're not supposed to be here," Webb said. His voice was calm, but his hand moved toward his belt. Stiles stepped forward. "Hospital security, routine inspection." Webb's eyes narrowed. "Show me your ID." Stiles reached for her badge. Webb pulled a gun. Everything happened in 2 seconds. Stiles dove left. Emily dropped and rolled behind a stack of crates. Webb fired once. The shot hit the concrete wall behind where Stiles had been standing, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Shouts erupted across the loading dock. Men in coveralls scattered. Truck engines roared to life. Emily's earpiece exploded with voices. Merrick shouting orders, Stiles calling for backup, radio chatter overlapping. Webb moved toward the crates where Emily was hiding. She could hear his footsteps, slow and deliberate. "Come out," Webb said. "Make this easy." Emily's hand closed around the tactical pen. Her training kicked in, breathing controlled, mind clear. She'd been in firefights overseas. This was just another one. Webb's shadow fell across the crates. Emily exploded upward, driving the pen toward his throat. Webb jerked back, the strike missing by inches. He swung the gun toward her. Emily grabbed his wrist and twisted hard, the way she'd been taught in hand-to-hand combat drills. Webb grunted and tried to pull free. Emily drove her knee into his ribs, once, twice, and felt something crack. Webb dropped the gun. Emily kicked it away and slammed him face first into the crates. She pressed the tactical pen against the base of his skull. "Don't move," she said. Webb laughed, the sound wet and painful. "You think you won? You think stopping me stops anything?" Behind them, federal agents in tactical gear poured onto the loading dock. Vehicles screeched to a halt outside. Spotlights flooded the area. Stiles appeared beside Emily, weapon drawn. "I've got him. Let him go." Emily stepped back, adrenaline still screaming through her veins. Agents swarmed the trucks, pulling drivers out, securing the cargo. Merrick walked onto the loading dock, radio in hand, coordinating the operation. He caught Emily's eye and nodded once. Webb was dragged to his feet, hands cuffed behind his back. Blood ran from his nose where Emily had slammed him into the crates. "This doesn't change anything," Webb spat. "Finch will bury you, all of you." Merrick stepped forward. "Gerald Finch is already in federal custody. We arrested him 10 minutes ago in his office along with Dr. Hollis and 3 members of your logistics team." Webb's face went pale. "It's over," Merrick said coldly. "The whole network's done." Agents led Webb away. Emily stood on the loading dock, breathing hard, watching the controlled chaos unfold around her. Stiles walked over. "You okay?" Emily nodded. "Yeah." "That was good work. Fast thinking." Emily didn't respond. She was staring at the trucks, at the crates, at the evidence of everything Finch and his people had been doing for years. Stealing from hospitals, selling to the highest bidder, getting people killed. Merrick approached. "We need you to come back to the command center. Federal prosecutors want your statement." "What about the hospital?" Emily asked. "Silvercrest's locked down," Merrick said. "FBI's executing search warrants right now. Medical records, supply logs, financial documents. It's all evidence." Emily nodded slowly. Her shift was supposed to end at midnight. Instead, she was standing on a loading dock watching federal agents dismantle a criminal network. She thought about the last 7 months. The silence. The isolation. The way everyone at Silvercrest had treated her like she didn't matter. And now the whole place was burning down around them. Stiles motioned toward a waiting vehicle. "Let's go. You've got a long night ahead." Emily started to follow, then stopped. "Wait," she said. "Where's Pruitt?" Merrick's expression darkened. Charge Nurse Pruitt left the hospital 20 minutes ago. Her car was last seen heading toward the state border. Emily's chest tightened. "She warned me. In the supply room. She told me to leave before something happened." "We know," Merrick said. "We heard the whole thing. We've got state police tracking her vehicle now." Emily climbed into the back of the SUV. Stiles got behind the wheel. They pulled away from the loading dock, past the tactical vehicles, past the agents securing the scene. Emily looked back at Silvercrest Memorial one last time. The place where she'd been invisible. The place where she'd been hunted. the place where she'd survived. The command center was fully operational when they arrived. Agents at every station, screens displaying surveillance footage, phones ringing constantly. Jacob Cross stood near the briefing room, arms crossed, watching everything unfold. He looked at Emily. "You all right?" "I'm fine," Emily said. Jacob studied her for a moment. "You don't look fine." "Yeah, well," Merrick appeared with the tablet. "Federal prosecutors need your full statement. Everything you saw tonight, everything you heard, everyone involved. It's going to take hours." Emily took the tablet. "What happens to the hospital?" "Silvercrest Memorial will be placed under federal oversight while the investigation continues," Merrick said. "Anyone directly involved in the network faces charges. Anyone who looked the other way gets reviewed. It's going to be a complete overhaul." Emily sat down at one of the workstations and started typing her statement. The words came slowly at first, then faster. Every detail from the past 12 hours, every conversation, every threat, every moment where her life had been in danger. It took 3 hours. When she finished, Emily handed the tablet back to Merrick and stood up. Her legs felt shaky. Her head felt fuzzy. "You should get some rest," Merrick said. "We've got a secure location set up. Federal protection until the trials start." Emily shook her head. "I want to go home." "Carter, I'm not running," Emily interrupted. "I'm not hiding. I did what you asked. I helped you catch them. Now I want to go home." Merrick was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "All right, but you keep the protective detail, non-negotiable." "Fine." Stiles drove her back to her apartment as the sun started rising over Ashford Heights. The streets were quiet. The city looked the same as it had yesterday, but everything felt different. Emily unlocked her apartment door and stepped inside. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was cold, precise, and completely unfamiliar. "Emily Carter, former Marine, current federal witness. You've made a lot of powerful people very unhappy." Emily's blood went cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who wants you to understand something. You didn't shut down a network tonight. You shut down one branch. There are others, bigger ones, and they don't appreciate interference." "Is that a threat?" "It's a courtesy. Walk away now. Disappear. Change your name again. Because if you testify, if you put faces and names in front of a jury, there won't be federal protection strong enough to keep you safe." The line went dead. Emily stood in her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, staring at nothing. Outside, she heard the protective detail's vehicle idling in the parking lot. Inside, she heard the sound of her own breathing. And somewhere in between, she heard the echo of a promise she'd made to herself a long time ago. Never run. Never hide. Even when the cost was everything. Emily lowered the phone slowly. Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. The initial shock had burned through her system and left something colder behind. Clarity. She walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot. The protective detail's vehicle sat exactly where Stiles had said it would be. 2 agents inside, visible now in the early morning light. They looked professional, alert. They also looked completely unaware that someone had just called her personal number with a death threat. Emily pulled up her recent calls. The unknown number showed no caller ID, no location data. Whoever had called knew how to stay invisible. She texted Merrick. "Just received a call. Threat against testifying. They know my number." The response came back in under 30 seconds. "Don't leave the apartment. We're sending a tech team to trace it." Emily set her phone on the counter and walked to her bedroom. She pulled open the closet and stared at the small duffel bag she kept in the back corner. Inside was everything she'd taken with her when she left the Marines. Discharge papers, medical records, a single photo of her unit taken 3 days before the mission that ended everything. She hadn't looked at that photo in 2 years. Emily zipped the bag closed without opening it and pushed it back into the corner. Running wasn't an option. Not because she was brave, because she was tired of being afraid. Her phone rang again. This time it was Merrick's number. "Carter," he said without preamble. "We traced the call. It bounced through 4 different proxy servers across 3 countries. Professional grade routing. Whoever called you has resources." "How did they get my number?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. Your contact information isn't in any public database. It's flagged as protected witness status. The only people who should have access are federal agents assigned to your case." Emily's stomach tightened. You're saying someone inside leaked it. I'm saying it's a possibility we can't ignore. Emily sat down on the edge of her bed. What now? Now you stay exactly where you are until we sweep your apartment and upgrade your security. No visitors, no deliveries, no exceptions. How long? 2 hours. Maybe less. Emily ended the call and sat in the silence of her apartment. The sun was fully up now, light streaming through the cheap blinds. Somewhere in the city, people were waking up for normal jobs, drinking coffee, complaining about traffic. She wondered what that felt like. By the time Merrick's tech team arrived, Emily had showered, changed into clean clothes, and consumed an entire pot of coffee. The team consisted of 3 agents in plain clothes who moved through her apartment with handheld scanners and electronic detection equipment. They checked every outlet, every smoke detector, every piece of furniture. One of them found a listening device embedded in the smoke alarm above her kitchen table. "How long has this been here?" Emily asked. The agent examined it carefully. "Based on the battery life, at least 3 months. Could be longer." 3 months. Someone had been listening to her private conversations for 3 months. Emily thought about every phone call she'd made from this apartment, every conversation with her mother back in Colorado, every mundane detail of her life. Someone had been cataloging all of it. The team removed 4 more devices, 2 in the bedroom, 1 in the bathroom, 1 near the front door. They swept her phone, her laptop, her car keys. Everything came back clean except the apartment itself. "You're secure now," the lead agent said, "but I'd recommend relocating to a federal safe house until the trial." "No," Emily said. "I'm staying here." The agent looked like he wanted to argue but didn't. He handed her a new phone. "Use this from now on. Encrypted. Only authorized contacts can reach you." After they left, Emily sat at her kitchen table and stared at the spot where the smoke alarm had been. Someone had walked into her apartment, installed surveillance equipment, and walked out without her ever knowing. The same way someone had walked into Silvercrest Memorial every day for years, stealing supplies, falsifying records, and nobody had noticed. Or maybe they had noticed and just didn't care. Her new phone buzzed. A message from Stiles. "Finch arraignment is this afternoon. Federal courthouse downtown. You should be there." Emily typed back, "Why?" "Because when he sees you walk into that courtroom alive, he'll know he lost." Emily arrived at the federal courthouse at 2 p.m. Security was intense. Metal detectors, bag searches, armed marshals everywhere. She went through 3 separate checkpoints before reaching the courtroom on the 4th floor. The hallway outside was packed with reporters, camera crews, attorneys in expensive suits. Emily kept her head down and moved toward the entrance. Someone called her name. She turned. Jacob Cross stood near the window, dressed in a clean Navy uniform. He looked different than he had at the command center, more formal, more official. The kind of person you saluted instead of questioned. "Didn't expect to see you here," Emily said. "Prosecution asked me to attend," Jacob said. "Show of force. Let Finch see exactly who he tried to kill." They walked into the courtroom together. The space was packed. Federal prosecutors at one table, defense attorneys at another, marshals stationed near every exit. Emily and Jacob sat in the gallery behind the prosecution team. 5 minutes later, marshals brought Gerald Finch into the courtroom. He wore an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. His silver hair was disheveled, his expensive suit replaced with prison-issue clothing. But his expression was still calm, still controlled. Until he saw Emily. His eyes locked onto hers and something flickered across his face. Rage, maybe, or fear. Emily held his gaze without blinking. The judge entered and everyone stood. "United States versus Gerald Finch," the judge said. "Mr. Finch, you are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of government property, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. How do you plead?" Finch's attorney stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The arraignment proceeded quickly. Bail denied, trial date set for 6 months out, conditions of detention established. Finch didn't speak except to confirm he understood the charges, but he never stopped staring at Emily. When the marshals let him out, he leaned toward his attorney and whispered something. The attorney's face went pale. Emily watched them disappear through the side door. Jacob leaned closer. "You okay?" "Yeah," Emily said. "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine, because Finch's expression right before he left wasn't defeat. It was confidence, like he knew something nobody else in that courtroom knew. After the arraignment, Emily met with the federal prosecutors in a conference room down the hall. Assistant U.S. Attorney Monica Reeves sat across from her, flanked by 2 junior attorneys and a paralegal. "Your testimony is going to be critical," Reeves said. "You witnessed the planted syringe. You saw the summit contractors. You were present during the loading dock operation. You're the thread that connects everything." "What about Finch's people?" Emily asked. "Webb, Hollis, Pruitt, are they cooperating?" Reeves's expression hardened. "Marcus Webb is refusing to talk. Dr. Hollis lawyered up immediately, and charge nurse Pruitt is still missing." Emily leaned forward. "Missing how?" "State police lost her vehicle near the Pennsylvania border. No trace since then. Either she's running or someone helped her disappear." "Or someone silenced her," Jacob said from his seat near the window. Reeves didn't disagree. "We have agents searching, but Pruitt knows how to stay hidden. She had access to false identification, cash reserves, safe houses. If she doesn't want to be found, it's going to take time." Emily thought about the way Pruitt had looked at her in the supply room, the warning she'd given, the syringe she'd disposed of without questions. Pruitt had known something was coming, and she'd tried to get Emily out before it happened. "What about the other hospitals?" Emily asked. "You said Silvercrest was one of 15. FBI is executing warrants across all 15 locations simultaneously," Reeves said. "We're coordinating with local law enforcement in 6 states. It's the largest medical fraud operation we've prosecuted in 20 years. One of the junior attorneys handed Emily a thick folder. "This is your witness preparation packet. Timeline, evidence list, deposition schedule. You'll need to review everything before trial." Emily took the folder. It was heavier than she expected. Reeves stood. "One more thing. There's been chatter on encrypted channels about potential retaliation against witnesses. We're taking it seriously. Your protective detail stays in place until the trial concludes." "Chatter from who?" Jacob asked. Reeves glanced at him. "People connected to Summit Health Logistics. People we haven't identified yet. The network is bigger than just Finch and his immediate circle." Emily felt the weight of those words settle over her. She'd thought catching Finch meant it was over, but it wasn't over. It was barely beginning. That night, Emily sat in her apartment reading through the witness packet. Page after page of evidence, shipping manifests, financial records, surveillance photos. The scope of the operation was staggering. 15 hospitals across 6 states, hundreds of thousands of dollars in stolen supplies, connections to criminal networks operating in 4 different countries. And she was the person who'd stumbled into the middle of it by accident. Her phone buzzed, the encrypted one the tech team had given her. Message from an unknown contact. "Check your email, personal account." Emily's pulse spiked. Nobody should have her personal email address. She'd stopped using it months ago, switched everything to a new account when she moved to Ashford Heights. She opened her laptop and logged into her old email account. One new message, no subject line, sent from an encrypted server. She opened it. The email contained a single attachment, a video file. Emily hesitated, then clicked play. The video showed a concrete room with harsh overhead lighting. A woman sat tied to a chair in the center of the frame, head down, face obscured by dark hair. The camera angle shifted. Emily's blood turned to ice. It was charge nurse Pruitt. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, blood crusted around her nose and mouth. She looked up at the camera with an expression that was pure terror. A voice spoke off-screen, distorted, mechanically altered. "Emily Carter, you've been very busy. Testifying, cooperating, playing hero, but heroes make mistakes. They think winning one battle means winning the war." The camera zoomed closer to Pruitt's face. "Nurse Pruitt made the mistake of warning you, of showing mercy. She thought she could walk away quietly. She was wrong." Something moved in the background, a figure in dark clothing. Pruitt started shaking her head frantically, trying to speak through the gag in her mouth. "You have a choice," the voice continued. "Withdraw your testimony. Tell the prosecutors you were mistaken, confused, traumatized. Make them doubt you. Do that, and Nurse Pruitt goes free. Refuse, and she dies. You have 24 hours." The video ended. Emily sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. Her phone rang immediately. Merrick. "Did you open the email?" he asked without greeting. "You're monitoring my accounts." "Of course we are. Did you watch the video?" "Yes." "We're tracing it now. Don't respond. Don't engage. This is a pressure tactic.
Emily's voice came out flat. They have Pruitt. They're going to kill her if I don't back out. We don't negotiate with extortion, Merrick said. The moment you withdraw your testimony, you become expendable. They'll kill you both. So we just let her die?
We find her. We have the best search teams in the country looking, but you don't give them what they want. Emily ended the call without responding. She sat in the dark apartment, the laptop screen casting pale light across her face. Somewhere in the city, or outside it, or in another state entirely, Pruitt was tied to a chair waiting to die. Because she'd tried to help Emily. Because she'd shown mercy. Emily pulled up the video again and watched it frame by frame, looking for anything identifiable. The concrete walls looked generic, could be a basement, a warehouse, a storage facility. The lighting was industrial, no windows, no visible markings. But there was sound. Emily turned up the volume and listened carefully. Behind the distorted voice, she could hear something faint, rhythmic, mechanical. A train. She grabbed her phone and called Stiles. I need access to railway maps around Ashford Heights. All freight lines within a 50-mile radius. Carter, there's a train in the background of the video. Freight train based on the rhythm. If we can match the timing and distance between passes, we can narrow down the location. Stiles was quiet for a moment. Send me the video file. Emily forwarded it immediately. 10 minutes later, Stiles called back. You're right. There's a freight line that runs through the industrial district on the east side of Ashford Heights. Trains pass every 40 minutes. Based on the audio signature, the location is probably within half a mile of the tracks. How many buildings fit that profile? Abandoned warehouses, old manufacturing plants, storage facilities, at least 30 locations. So we searched them. Emily, this could be a trap. They could be using Pruitt as bait to draw you out. Then don't send me. Send tactical teams, but do it now because that 24-hour deadline starts counting whether we like it or not. 2 hours later, Emily sat in the back of an FBI tactical vehicle parked 3 blocks from the industrial district. Stiles was beside her, monitoring radio communications from 8 different search teams fanning out across the area. Merrick was coordinating from the command center, his voice crackling through the speakers. Team 3, what's your status? Warehouse on Morrison Street is clear, moving to next location. Team 5? Storage facility on 10th Avenue, locked, but we're breaching now. Emily watched the tactical map on Stiles' tablet. Each team was represented by a blue dot moving through the grid of streets. 30 buildings, 8 teams, time running out. Her phone buzzed. New message on the encrypted line. Tick-tock, Emily. 16 hours left. Choose wisely. Emily showed the message to Stiles. They're watching, Stiles said quietly. They know we're searching. Good, Emily said. Let them watch. Another hour passed. More buildings cleared. No sign of Pruitt. Then Team 7 called in. We've got something. Old textile plant on Industrial Boulevard. Fresh tire tracks in the back lot. Building's supposed to be condemned, but the locks look new. Merrick's voice came through immediately. All teams converge on that location. Team 7, hold position. Do not breach until backup arrives. Emily was already reaching for the door handle. Stiles grabbed her arm. You're not going in there. She's in there because of me, which is exactly why you're staying here. If this is a trap, they want you walking through that door. Emily pulled her arm free. Then they're going to get what they want. She climbed out of the vehicle before Stiles could stop her. The industrial district was dark, the streetlights broken or burned out. Emily moved quickly through the shadows, following the route on her phone's GPS. Behind her, she could hear Stiles calling for backup, but Emily didn't slow down. The textile plant loomed ahead, 3 stories of crumbling brick and broken windows. FBI tactical vehicles were already pulling up outside, agents in body armor deploying around the perimeter. Emily reached the building just as Team 7 started their breach. The front door exploded inward with a controlled charge. Agents poured through, weapons raised, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Emily followed them inside. The interior was exactly what she'd seen in the video. Concrete floors, industrial lighting, rows of empty space where machinery used to be. The agents moved through systematically, clearing each section. Second floor clear. Third floor clear. Basement access located. Emily descended the stairs behind the tactical team. The basement was smaller, more confined. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. The air smelled like rust and mold. And there, In the center of the room was the chair from the video. Empty. No Pruitt, no blood, no signs of struggle. One of the agents called out, "We've got something!" Emily moved toward his voice. He was standing near a support column, shining his light on something attached to the concrete. A phone, duct taped to the pillar. It was playing a looped video, the same video Emily had received. "It's a recording," the agent said. "She was never here." Emily stared at the phone. The whole thing had been staged. They'd filmed Pruitt somewhere else, sent the video, planted the phone here as misdirection, which meant they were still holding her. And Emily had just walked away from her protective detail to chase a decoy. Stiles appeared at the top of the stairs. "Carter, we need to move, now!" But Emily was already looking at the phone screen, watching the video loop again. And this time, she saw something she'd missed before. In the reflection on Pruitt's glasses, barely visible, was a window. And through that window, she could see the edge of a sign, red letters, partial word. Arson Mehdi, Carson Medical Supply. Emily grabbed the phone and ran up the stairs. "I know where she is." Stiles caught her arm. "Carson Medical Supply closed 2 years ago. Building's been empty since then." "Then that's where they took her. It's connected to the network, has to be. Medical supply distribution, access to inventory, perfect cover." Merrick's voice crackled through Stiles' radio. "Carson Medical is in the database. It was one of Summit Health Logistics' distribution partners before it went bankrupt. Building's been sitting in legal limbo ever since." "Where?" Emily demanded. "North side of the city, 20 minutes from your current location." Emily was already moving toward the exit. This time, Stiles didn't try to stop her. The convoy of tactical vehicles raced across Ashford Heights with lights but no sirens. Emily sat in the lead vehicle, watching the city blur past. 12 minutes to reach Carson Medical Supply. 12 minutes to find Pruitt before whoever was holding her realized the decoy had failed. The building appeared ahead, a massive concrete structure with loading docks and a chain-link fence. The sign out front was partially collapsed, but Emily could still read the faded letters, Carson Medical Supply. The vehicle screeched to a halt outside the fence. This time, Emily waited for the tactical teams to breach first. She'd learned her lesson at the textile plant. The agents cut through the fence and moved toward the building in coordinated teams. Emily followed 30 seconds behind, staying close to Stiles. The front entrance was chained shut. One of the agents placed a breaching charge and blew the lock. The chain fell away and the doors swung open. Inside, the building was dark and silent. Row after row of empty shelving units stretched into the darkness. The agents' flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing dust, debris, and nothing else. "Ground floor clear! Moving to second level!" Emily walked deeper into the building, scanning every shadow. This was the right place. She could feel it. A sound echoed from somewhere above, muffled, distant. "Third floor!" someone shouted. Emily took the stairs 2 at a time. The third floor was different from the others: offices, conference rooms, executive spaces. The agents moved through quickly, weapons raised, and then they found it, a storage room at the end of the hall. The door was reinforced steel, locked from the outside. One of the agents kicked it open. Charge nurse Donna Pruitt sat tied to a chair in the middle of the room, exactly like in the video. But this time it was real. Her face was bruised, her wrists raw from restraints. She looked up when the door opened, eyes wide with terror and relief. "Clear," the agent called. "We've got her." Emily pushed into the room as agents cut Pruitt's restraints and checked her for injuries. Pruitt was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't tell them anything," Pruitt whispered. "I swear I didn't." "You're safe now," Emily said. "It's over." But it wasn't over. Because standing in the doorway behind them, hands raised in surrender, was Dr. Raymond Hollis. He wasn't wearing handcuffs. He wasn't under guard. He was holding a federal badge. "Special Agent Raymond Hollis," he said calmly. "FBI, deep cover. I've been embedded at Silvercrest Memorial for 8 months. Emily stared at him. "What?" Hollis lowered his hand slowly. "The medical incompetence, the arrogance, the way I treated you, it was all part of the cover. I had to maintain my position inside Finch's operation without raising suspicion." Stiles stepped forward, weapon still drawn. "Show me credentials." Hollis pulled out a badge and identification.
Stiles examined them carefully, then lowered her weapon. He's legitimate. Emily felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. You were FBI the whole time? Since before you arrived at Silvercrest, Hollis said. Captain Merrick and I coordinated your placement. We needed someone who could work alongside me without knowing I was federal. Someone genuine. Someone Finch wouldn't suspect. You let them try to kill me, Emily said, her voice hard. The syringe, the contractors, everything. I prevented them from killing you, Hollis corrected. The potassium chloride in that surgical tray? I'm the one who flagged it to Pruitt. I knew she'd intercept it before you could be blamed. Emily looked at Pruitt. You knew he was FBI? Pruitt shook her head. Not until tonight. He showed up here, pulled his badge, and told me to stay quiet. Said he was working a federal operation. Hollis stepped into the room. Finch's people grabbed Pruitt when she tried to leave the city. They were going to use her as leverage against you. I tracked them here and convinced them I was still part of the operation. Told them I'd handle the video, buy them time. And then you sent us the location, Emily said slowly. After I made sure the real threat was neutralized, Hollis said. The men holding Pruitt are in federal custody as of 10 minutes ago. They were arrested in the parking lot when they tried to flee. Emily felt exhausted. How many more people are part of this? How many more secrets are there? None, Merrick's voice said from behind her. She turned. Captain Merrick stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Hollis was the only embedded agent. Everything else you saw was real. Finch, Webb, the network, all of it was exactly what it looked like. Except the one doctor I thought was trying to kill me was actually trying to save me, Emily said. Merrick almost smiled. Welcome to undercover operations. Paramedics arrived and started treating Pruitt's injuries. FBI agents escorted Hollis out to debrief with the tactical commander. Emily stood in the empty room trying to process everything. Stiles appeared beside her. You okay? No, Emily said honestly, but I'm still here. Outside Carson Medical Supply, the first light of dawn was breaking over Ashford Heights. Emily walked past the convoy of vehicles, past the agents securing the scene, past the reporters who were already starting to arrive. Jacob was waiting near one of the SUVs. Heard you found her, he said. Yeah. Heard Hollis was FBI the whole time. Yeah. Jacob studied her. That's got to mess with your head. Everything about this messes with my head, Emily said. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun come up. What happens now? Jacob asked. Now I testify, Emily said. And we make sure Finch and everyone working with him goes to prison. And after that? Emily didn't have an answer. Her phone buzzed, the encrypted one. Message from Merrick. We need you back at the command center. There's something you need to see. Emily showed the message to Jacob. They climbed into one of the waiting vehicles and headed back across the city. The command center was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Agents at every station, screens displaying arrest records and evidence logs. Merrick was waiting in the briefing room. What is it? Emily asked. Merrick pulled up a file on the main screen. We executed a search warrant on Finch's personal residence this morning. Found a safe hidden behind a false wall in his office. The screen displayed photos of documents, hard drives, encrypted phones. Inside that safe, Merrick continued, we found records of every transaction Summit Health Logistics has made in the past 4 years. Names, dates, amounts, everything. Emily leaned closer. That's enough to prosecute the entire network. It would be, Merrick said, except for one problem. He pulled up another document, a ledger, handwritten, dated 3 months ago. Emily's name was on it. Next to her name was a dollar amount, $50,000, classified as payment received. Emily's blood went cold. That's not real. I know, Merrick said. But Finch's defense team is going to argue that you were part of the operation, that you were taking bribes, that your testimony is unreliable because you're trying to save yourself. That's insane. I never took money from anyone. I believe you, Merrick said, but a jury might not, especially if Finch's lawyers find a way to plant doubt. Emily stared at the document. Finch had known all along that if he went down, he'd take her with him. One final trap set months ago, waiting to spring at exactly the right moment. How do we prove it's fake? Jacob asked. Merrick was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, We can't.
Emily stared at the forged document on the screen. Her name, a fabricated payment, evidence that didn't exist but looked real enough to destroy everything. There has to be a way, she said. Merrick closed the file. Financial forensics can trace the ledger's origin, prove it was created recently, show the handwriting analysis. But that takes time. Weeks, maybe months. And Finch's trial starts in 6 weeks. So we're just supposed to let him use this against me? No, Merrick said. We prove you're telling the truth by showing the jury who you actually are. Emily's jaw tightened. I'm not parading my military service in front of a courtroom to defend myself against lies. Then what do you want to do? Merrick asked. His voice wasn't challenging, it was genuine. Because right now, Finch's defense team is going to paint you as a corrupt nurse who got caught and flipped on her partners to save herself. They're going to shred your credibility, and without your testimony, half our case falls apart. Jacob stepped forward. What about Hollis? He was embedded. He saw everything. Hollis can testify to the operational structure, Merrick said. But he wasn't present for the critical moments Emily witnessed. The syringe, the loading dock confrontation with Webb, the direct threats. Those are Emily's testimony. Those are what connect Finch personally to attempted murder. Emily walked to the window and looked out at Ashford Heights. The city was waking up properly now, traffic building, people heading to work, life continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She'd spent 7 months trying to be invisible, trying to keep her head down, trying to survive in a place that didn't want her. And now she had to stand up in federal court and let everyone see exactly who she was. I'll testify, Emily said without turning around. But we do it my way. Merrick raised an eyebrow. Which is? I don't defend myself against the forgery. I attack it. I make Finch's lawyers prove it's real. Burden of proof goes both ways. Stiles crossed her arms. That's risky. If the jury even considers the possibility you were involved, then we make sure they don't, Emily interrupted. She turned back to face them. You said financial forensics can trace when the ledger was created. How long? 3 weeks minimum, Merrick said. Then we have 3 weeks to build a case so strong that the forgery looks exactly like what it is. A desperate last move by someone who knows he's finished. Prosecutor Monica Reeves called Emily into her office the next morning. The room was smaller than Emily expected, cluttered with case files and legal briefs stacked on every surface. Reeves sat behind her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, flipping through documents. Sit, Reeves said without looking up. Emily sat. Reeves closed the file she was reading and removed her glasses. Merrick tells me you want to go on the offensive. I want to tell the truth, Emily said. And I want Finch to choke on his lies. A small smile crossed Reeves's face. Good, because I don't put witnesses on the stand who aren't willing to fight. She pulled out a legal pad. Let's talk strategy. Finch's defense team is going to hit you with the forged payment record. They're going to suggest you had financial motive to participate in the network. How do you counter that? Bank records, Emily said. Tax returns. Credit card statements. If I received $50,000 3 months ago, there should be a trace. There won't be because it never happened. They'll argue you hid it. Offshore accounts, cash payments, cryptocurrencies. Then subpoena my entire financial history, every transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal. Put it all in front of the jury. Let them see exactly how much money I didn't have. Reeves made a note. What about character witnesses? Emily hesitated. She didn't have many people who could speak to her character. She'd spent 3 years keeping everyone at arm's length. My former commanding officer in the Marines, Emily said finally. He can testify to my record. Anyone from Silvercrest Memorial? Emily thought about the nurses who'd ignored her, the doctors who'd dismissed her, the administrators who'd treated her like she was disposable. Then she thought about the patients. There's a woman named Sarah Jennings, Emily said. She came into the ER 6 months ago with chest pain. The attending physician wanted to discharge her, said it was anxiety. I pushed back, insisted we run cardiac enzymes. She was having a heart attack. I saved her life. Reeves wrote that down. Anyone else? A kid named Marcus, 12 years old, came in with what everyone thought was the flu. I noticed petechial rash on his chest. Meningococcal infection. He would have been dead in 6 hours if we hadn't caught it. How many patients like that? Reeves asked. Emily thought about the last 7 months, the late shifts, the double backs, the moments where she'd been the only person paying attention. "A dozen," she said. "Maybe more." Reeves leaned forward. "Then we find every single one of them. We put them on the stand. We show the jury that you weren't working at Silvercrest Memorial to steal supplies or take bribes. You were there to save lives. And we make Finch's lawyers explain why someone doing that kind of work would suddenly decide to join a criminal network." Emily felt something shift in her chest. Not hope exactly. Something steadier. "What about Finch himself?" Emily asked. "Does he testify?" "His lawyers will advise against it. But I'm betting his ego won't let him stay silent. Men like Gerald Finch don't sit quietly while other people tell their story. He'll want to control the narrative." "And when he does?" Reeves smiled. "Then we destroy him." The next 3 weeks moved faster than Emily thought possible. Financial forensics confirmed the ledger was created recently. Carbon dating on the paper showed it was manufactured only 2 months ago, despite being dated to transactions that supposedly occurred 4 months earlier. Handwriting analysis revealed the entries were written by 2 different people trying to mimic each other's style. The forgery fell apart under examination, but Finch's defense team didn't back down. They filed motions, challenged the forensics, demanded independent verification. They were buying time, trying to create enough doubt that the jury would question everything. Emily spent her days preparing testimony with Reeves and her nights going through her own records. Every shift she'd worked, every patient she'd treated, every moment she could document. Stiles helped her track down former patients, coordinate witness schedules, build a timeline that showed exactly who Emily Carter actually was. Jacob stopped by her apartment one evening while she was reviewing medical charts. "You look tired," he said. "I am tired." He sat down across from her. "You don't have to do this alone." Emily glanced up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been carrying this by yourself since the beginning. The investigation, the threats, the trial prep. You're allowed to let other people help." Emily set down the chart she was reading. "I don't know how to do that." "I noticed." They sat in silence for a moment. "What happened overseas?" Jacob asked quietly. "Merrick mentioned your unit, the mission that ended your deployment." Emily's hands tightened around the edge of the table. "We were extracting wounded personnel from a combat zone. Intel said the area was secure. It wasn't. We took fire from 3 directions. Half my team died trying to get those soldiers out. That wasn't your fault. I was team leader. I made the call to proceed, based on bad intelligence." "Doesn't matter. They died because I led them in." Jacob leaned forward. "And how many people lived because you led them out?" Emily didn't answer. "Merrick told me you carried 2 wounded soldiers through active fire," Jacob said. "Took shrapnel in your shoulder but didn't stop until they were both on the transport. They survived because of you." 4 others didn't." "No," Jacob said. 4 others died because someone fed your team bad intelligence and sent you into an ambush. You didn't kill them. You tried to save them. There's a difference." Emily felt her throat tighten. She'd spent 3 years believing she was responsible for those deaths. 3 years carrying guilt that wasn't hers to carry. "I don't know how to let it go," she said. "You don't have to let it go," Jacob said. "You just have to stop letting it define you." The trial began on a cold Monday morning in October. Emily arrived at the federal courthouse early, dressed in a simple gray suit Reeves had helped her pick out. Professional but not expensive. Credible but not pretentious. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, cameras, spectators. Emily kept her head down and walked through security without making eye contact with anyone. Inside, the courtroom was already filling. Finch's defense team occupied 1 table, 3 attorneys in expensive suits, assistants carrying boxes of documents. The prosecution table held Reeves and her team, organized and ready. Emily sat in the gallery behind the prosecution, Jacob beside her. Finch was led in by marshals. He wore a different suit this time, navy blue, perfectly tailored. His hair was combed back, his expression calm. He looked like a respected administrator, not a criminal defendant. His eyes found Emily immediately. She held his gaze without flinching. The judge entered, and everyone stood. United States versus Gerald Finch. Opening statements. Reeves stood and walked to the jury box. 12 faces looked back at her, men and women from different backgrounds, different lives, brought together to decide whether Gerald Finch was guilty of the crimes he'd been charged with. Ladies and gentlemen, Reeves began, this case is about trust. When you go to a hospital, you trust that the doctors and nurses caring for you are focused on one thing, saving your life. You trust that the medications they give you are safe. You trust that the equipment they use is properly maintained. You trust that the people running the hospital care more about patients than profits. She paused, letting that sink in. Gerald Finch violated that trust. For 3 years, he systematically stole medical supplies from Silvercrest Memorial Hospital and sold them on the black market. Medications that should have gone to patients went to the highest bidder. Surgical equipment that should have saved lives was shipped overseas to fund his criminal network. And when a federal operative discovered what he was doing, Mr. Finch tried to have that operative killed inside his own hospital. Reeves walked back toward the prosecution table. The evidence will show that Mr. Finch orchestrated a conspiracy involving 15 hospitals across 6 states, that he falsified records, bribed logistics coordinators, and created shell companies to hide his crimes. And that when Nurse Emily Carter, a probationary employee who'd only worked at Silvercrest for 7 months, witnessed his operation firsthand, he ordered her execution to protect himself. Reeves gestured toward Emily. You will hear from Nurse Carter. You will hear about the night she saved Lieutenant Jacob Cross from a lethal injection ordered by Mr. Finch. You will hear about the threats, the surveillance, the systematic attempt to silence her. And you will hear from the patients whose lives she saved while Mr. Finch was stealing the very supplies she needed to do her job. Reeves returned to her seat. Finch's lead attorney stood. His name was Martin Kellerman, a defense lawyer known for getting wealthy clients acquitted. He walked slowly to the jury box, hands in his pockets, expression thoughtful. My client is not a criminal, Kellerman said simply. He's an administrator who dedicated 30 years to healthcare, who oversaw a hospital that served thousands of patients, who maintained budgets, managed staff, ensured quality care. Kellerman paused. But he's also human, and humans make mistakes. The prosecution wants you to believe that Mr. Finch masterminded a vast criminal conspiracy. They want you to believe he's some kind of medical crime lord. The reality is far simpler. Mr. Finch trusted the wrong people. He delegated responsibilities to subordinates who betrayed that trust. And when those subordinates were caught, they pointed fingers at him to save themselves. Kellerman walked toward the prosecution table. You will hear testimony from Nurse Emily Carter. The prosecution will paint her as a hero, a whistleblower, a brave witness standing up to corruption. But the evidence will show something different. You will see financial records indicating Nurse Carter received payments from the very network she claims to have exposed. You will hear testimony suggesting she was part of the operation until she got caught, and you will be forced to ask yourselves, who's really on trial here? He returned to his seat. The judge looked at Reeves. Call your first witness. Reeves stood. The prosecution calls Lieutenant Jacob Cross. Jacob walked to the witness stand, raised his right hand, and swore to tell the truth. He sat down, spine straight, hands folded in his lap. Reeves approached. Lieutenant Cross, can you tell the jury what happened on the night of September 14th? Jacob's testimony was clear and direct. He described being transported through Ashford Heights, the classified nature of his mission, waking up in Silvercrest Memorial to find Emily checking his vitals. He described the potassium chloride in the IV line, the way Emily had recognized him as military, her decision to help him escape. Why did you trust her? Reeves asked. Because she saw what no one else bothered to see, Jacob said. She looked at me like I was a person, not a problem to be solved. Kellerman's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned Jacob's memory, suggested his judgment was impaired, implied that Emily might have planted the potassium chloride herself to create a false rescue scenario. Isn't it possible, Kellerman asked, that Nurse Carter was working with the people trying to kill you and she only helped you escape after she realized the plan had failed? No, Jacob said flatly. How can you be certain? Because I've spent my entire career learning to read people in life or death situations. I know the difference between someone trying to help and someone trying to hurt me. Emily Carter saved my life. That's not debatable. Kellerman returned to his seat without another word. The prosecution called witness after witness over the next 3 days. Financial analysts who traced the stolen supplies, FBI agents who documented the network, medical staff who testified about irregularities in inventory records. And then Reeves called Emily. Emily walked to the witness stand on the morning of the 4th day.
The courtroom was packed, every seat filled. She raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. Reeves approached slowly. Nurse Carter, how long did you work at Silvercrest Memorial Hospital? 7 months. During that time, did you ever receive any payments from Gerald Finch or anyone associated with Summit Health Logistics? No. Did you ever participate in stealing medical supplies? No. Did you ever falsify records or help conceal inventory discrepancies? No. Reeves pulled out a document. The defense has presented a ledger allegedly showing you received $50,000 3 months ago. Did that transaction occur? It did not. How can you be certain? Because I can barely afford my rent, Emily said. If I'd received $50,000, my life would look very different. A few people in the gallery laughed quietly. Reeves walked Emily through the events of that night, finding Jacob, recognizing the military tattoo, discovering the potassium chloride, escaping the hospital. She described the surveillance devices in her apartment, the planted syringe in the surgical tray, the contractors who'd been sent to kill her. Why do you think Mr. Finch wanted you dead? Reeves asked. Because I saw what he was doing, and I refused to look away. Kellerman stood for cross-examination. He was calm, methodical, and relentless. Nurse Carter, you've testified that you received no payments from my client, but you also testified that you were barely making rent, correct? Yes. Struggling financially? Yes. Desperate, perhaps? Emily met his eyes. I was surviving. That's different than desperate. Is it? Kellerman walked closer. You were a probationary nurse at a hospital where nobody respected you. You were living paycheck to paycheck, and then you stumbled into information about a profitable operation. Isn't it possible you saw an opportunity? No. Isn't it possible you joined the network, got caught, and decided to cooperate with federal authorities to avoid prosecution? No. Kellerman held up the forged ledger. This document shows, That document is fake, Emily interrupted. Carbon dating proved it. Handwriting analysis proved it. Financial forensics proved it. The only thing that document shows is how desperate Mr. Finch was to discredit me. Kellerman's expression hardened. You're asking this jury to believe that a decorated hospital administrator with 30 years of experience would risk everything to frame a probationary nurse nobody had ever heard of. I'm asking this jury to look at the evidence, Emily said. Not at what someone's resume says, but at what they actually did. Kellerman changed tactics. Let's talk about your military service. You were a combat medic, correct? Yes. And you were discharged after a mission went wrong, a mission where half your unit was killed. Emily's chest tightened. That's correct? Were you investigated for that incident? Yes. And cleared of any wrongdoing. But you left the military shortly after. I was honorably discharged. Because you couldn't handle the pressure? Reeves shot to her feet. Objection. Relevance. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Kellerman, move on. Kellerman walked back to his table. No further questions. Emily stepped down from the witness stand, her legs shaking. She returned to her seat beside Jacob, who gave her a small nod. The prosecution rested its case. Finch's defense team called their own witnesses, character references, financial experts, medical consultants. They tried to paint Finch as a victim of circumstance, surrounded by corrupt subordinates. And then, against his lawyer's advice, Gerald Finch took the stand. He sat with perfect posture, hands folded, expression serene. Kellerman walked him through 30 years of hospital administration, the awards he'd received, the budgets he'd balanced, the lives that had been saved under his leadership. Mr. Finch, Kellerman said, did you ever steal medical supplies from Silvercrest Memorial Hospital? No. Did you ever order the death of Lieutenant Jacob Cross? No. Did you ever threaten Nurse Emily Carter? No. Kellerman returned to his seat. Reeves stood for cross-examination. She walked slowly toward the witness stand, holding a single piece of paper. Mr. Finch, you testified that you never stole medical supplies. Is that correct? Yes. Then can you explain why surveillance footage from the loading dock shows you personally overseeing shipments to Summit Health Logistics? Finch's expression didn't change. I oversee all major shipments. It's part of my job.
Can you explain why those shipments contain supplies that don't appear in Silvercrest's inventory records? Clerical errors. Can you explain why you called a phone number registered to Marcus Webb 47 times in the month before Lieutenant Cross was brought to your hospital? Mr. Webb was a vendor. We had ongoing business. Reeves held up the paper. This is a transcript of one of those phone calls, recorded by federal surveillance. Would you like me to read it to the jury? Finch's calm facade cracked slightly. That's out of context. Reeves read anyway. Quote, "The Navy operative can't reach Quantico. Make sure he doesn't leave Ashford Heights alive." End quote. That's your voice, Mr. Finch, recorded on September 14th at 6:43 p.m., 3 hours before Lieutenant Cross was brought to your hospital. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Reeves stepped closer. You knew Lieutenant Cross was coming. You knew what he was going to testify about, and you ordered his execution. That's not... You also knew Emily Carter would be working that night because you'd been monitoring her movements for months. You knew she'd been placed at Silvercrest by federal authorities. And when she helped Lieutenant Cross escape, you ordered her killed too. Finch's hands clenched. You're twisting everything. I'm reading your own words, Reeves said coldly. She held up another document. This is a text message from your personal phone to Marcus Webb. Quote, "Find the nurse. Make it look like an accident. Sent at 11:57 p.m. on September 14th, 20 minutes after Nurse Carter left the hospital with Lieutenant Cross." Finch's face had gone pale. Reeves walked back to her table and picked up the forged ledger. And when you realized your operation was collapsing, you created this, a fake payment record, a desperate attempt to discredit the one witness who could tie you directly to attempted murder. She dropped the ledger on the witness stand in front of Finch. You're not a victim, Mr. Finch. You're a criminal who got caught, and now you're trying to take down everyone around you to save yourself. Finch didn't respond. Reeves returned to her seat. No further questions. Closing arguments happened the next day. Kellerman tried to salvage what was left of Finch's defense, but the damage was done. The recorded phone calls, the text messages, the surveillance footage, it all pointed in one direction. Reeves's closing was brief. Gerald Finch had power, money, and respect, but it wasn't enough. He wanted more. And when people like Emily Carter and Jacob Cross threatened to expose him, he tried to have them killed. This case isn't complicated. The evidence is clear. The only question is whether you're willing to hold a powerful man accountable for his crimes. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the four women stood. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of theft of government property? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for the doors. Finch sat motionless at the defense table, staring straight ahead. Emily closed her eyes and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Relief. Sentencing happened 3 weeks later. Gerald Finch received 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Dr. Hollis testified in exchange for immunity. Marcus Webb got 30 years. The other administrators and logistics coordinators across the 15 hospitals received sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years. Charge Nurse Pruitt was found living under a false identity in New Mexico. She cooperated with prosecutors, testified against the remaining network members, and received a reduced sentence of 8 years. Silvercrest Memorial Hospital was placed under new management. The entire administration was replaced. New oversight committees were established. The hospital became a case study in what happens when profit takes priority over patients. Emily stood outside the courthouse after sentencing, watching Finch being led away in handcuffs. Jacob stood beside her. "How do you feel?" he asked. Emily thought about the question. Empty, tired, relieved, all of it at once. That's normal. Is it? Jacob smiled. I have no idea. Captain Merrick appeared from the courthouse entrance. He walked over and handed Emily a folder. What's this? She asked. Job offer. Navy's recruiting combat medics for a new training program. Teaching battlefield medicine to special operations units. They want instructors with real experience. Emily opened the folder and scanned the details. The job was based in Virginia, competitive salary, full benefits.
A chance to teach the next generation of medics the things that had kept her alive overseas. Why me? Emily asked. Because you're the kind of person who sees what others miss, Merrick said. And because you don't run when things get hard. Emily looked at Jacob. What do you think? I think you'd be incredible at it, Jacob said, but it's your choice. Emily closed the folder. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need, Merrick said. He shook her hand. Whatever you decide, Carter, you did good work. Be proud of that. He walked away, leaving Emily and Jacob standing on the courthouse steps. What are you going to do? Jacob asked. Emily looked out at Ashford Heights, the city that had ignored her, hunted her, and ultimately couldn't break her. I'm going to go home, she said. Pack my things. Say goodbye to this place. And then? Then I'm going to Virginia, because I'm tired of being invisible, and I'm tired of letting other people decide what I'm worth. Jacob smiled. Good. They walked down the courthouse steps together, past the reporters, past the cameras, past the crowd of people who suddenly wanted to know her story. Emily Carter had spent 7 months being treated like she didn't matter. She'd spent 3 years believing the worst thing about herself. She'd spent a lifetime learning to stay quiet, stay hidden, stay safe. But safety was overrated, and silence had never saved anyone. 6 months later, Emily stood in front of a classroom at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Virginia. 20 combat medics sat in front of her, young, eager, nervous, the same way she'd been once. I'm not here to teach you how to be heroes, Emily said. I'm here to teach you how to stay alive long enough to save the people who need you, because that's what matters. Not the medals, not the recognition, the lives you save when nobody's watching. She pulled up the first slide of her presentation, a tactical scenario, casualties in a hostile environment, limited supplies. You're going to make mistakes, Emily continued. You're going to doubt yourselves. You're going to face situations where every option looks impossible, and in those moments, you're going to have to decide who you are, not who you were trained to be, who you are. She looked at the faces staring back at her. I spent 3 years believing I was responsible for deaths I couldn't prevent. I spent 7 months being treated like I didn't matter. And I spent one night realizing that the only person who gets to define my worth is me. Emily clicked to the next slide. So let's get to work. Because somewhere out there, someone's going to need you. And when that happens, I want you ready. The medics leaned forward, taking notes, asking questions, learning. Emily taught them everything she knew. The techniques that saved lives, the instincts that kept soldiers alive, the moments where hesitation meant death and action meant survival. She taught them because she knew what it felt like to be overlooked. She taught them because she knew what it felt like to fight when everyone said you'd lose. She taught them because she knew that somewhere, in a hospital or a battlefield or a dark place where nobody was watching, someone was going to need help. And the person who showed up to give it wouldn't be the loudest voice or the most respected name or the one with the most power. It would be the person who refused to look away, the person who saw what others missed, the person who understood that strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and doing it anyway. Emily Carter had learned that lesson the hard way, and she was never going to forget it,